Hello everyone, and welcome to another Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, Moral Excellence in the Workplace. We are continuing in Chapter 8, which is all about management leads with character. And before we start tonight, I want to just bring something that I heard on the news today. They were talking about how there were certain people who are a part of certain sports, and they were high leaders, and they were getting sued because of their language that they were using. And the news reporter said, these people value their profits over morality. And I thought that was a very interesting choice of words, that she said that they value their profits more than their morality. And this is really what the Peaceful Solution is trying to instill, that you can make a profit, but you can still do it with morality. So we're bringing those two together. So that brings us to where we went over last week about how successful managers are decisive. And remember, decisive means able to come to a decision, make up one's mind, and remain firm on that matter. We remain firm on the matter. No matter what is at hand, we don't let ourselves become distracted. We don't allow ourselves to waver from what we know is right. Even when we are under pressure, we don't act impulsive. That's why we stop, we think, we consider our options, and then we proceed with the right choice. And that right choice is one that won't hurt ourselves, others, or the environment. And last week we covered in the acceptance book on page 145, it's talked about a right choice. But further down on the page, it said that even when you make a right choice, you're going to face rejection. I think that's something that's really important to keep in mind, is when you make a right choice, not everyone is going to agree with you. Not everyone is going to say, oh yeah, it's a right choice, I'm going to go along with it. No, people are going to be there. They might get upset, and they might voice it to you. They might voice it to their coworkers. They might even show it in how they destroy things, or just in their slack, how they don't do their job properly. But we shouldn't, as managers and authority figures, be slack. We shouldn't allow that to deter us from doing what is right. So we talked about being decisive, and then that successful managers train their employees. We establish routine and patterns, and that even sometimes that means including rewards and incentives to motivate and encourage personal growth. But on page 49, under point number 4, the last sentence, it says, encourage your employees to be committed by giving 100% in everything they do, because others are depending on them. And that's really what we want to develop ourselves, plus the people we're working with, that we want to give our best because we value what we do. We see value in it. And then we talked about how managers are personable and approachable. And Tana covered that really well last week on how even in her work area, how if she is not approachable, how it actually hinders the interactions in her work area. And think about being approachable, and then step number 5, and then step number 6, about an active listener. And I want you to think about society today, how there is a lot of abuse in the workplace, whether it's verbal, whether it's physical, or other abuse. And if you, as a manager, are not approachable, people can suffer in silence. Or you can be approachable, but when people bring the matters to you and you don't actively listen, you're not aware of what goes on in your workplace then. That could also be a reason why your workplace is suffering, because people have brought, things to attention, and because we as authorities didn't listen, we weren't able to help solve the problems. We weren't able to bring things to the proper authorities and be able to find the solutions. And I went online to really see how this affects society. And they said that because people retaliate or because nothing's done, a lot of people don't report whenever they're going through certain things. And one thing to keep in mind, as we covered in the previous chapters, is it doesn't just stay at work. It goes home. It takes over their lives. But you in your work area, you're going to see the effects of this. And then on page 150, we talked about being an active listener. understanding the intent behind the words that is being said, and that active listeners allow others to find solutions to their problems and supports and encourage personal and professional growth. And that also allows people to see their potential, but also allows you to see from different perspectives, to see things, because not everyone sees things the way I see them. And that is because I've experienced different things than you have. And that it can be both positive and it can be a little difficult at times too, because you can be so, no, this is what needs to be done. But when you step back and you see it from someone's point of view, you can start to realize why people do the things that they do. And then when it boils down to it, most of the time they're not educated. They are not educated, or they do not have the support system they need to continue to make right choices, or they don't have the confidence that they need. Going on over to page 151, where we talked about don't be judgmental or sarcastic. And this has been really in my mind throughout since last week, because ever since we covered this, I swear, like I've heard every time someone is sarcastic, I just hear, oh, they're sarcastic. Even the simple thing like, it's so warm outside, you better wear a coat. It starts as simple as that. And you know, people say that all the time. But when you think about how when you start doing it without recognizing it, it shows here how you can make people feel devalued and worthless. You know, things that can be a joke can actually change someone to where they actually shut down. They don't speak to anyone. They're a changed person because it's just jokes to you. But to them, it's not that way. And I looked up what the word sarcastic means, and it means the use of irony to mock or convey contempt. So, you know, this is something that I am kind of a sarcastic person in a way that it's not rude, but it's kind of like not optimistic either, if you know what I mean. Like if something goes wrong, I kind of change it, because as Tana said last week, that's sometimes how people cope with things. That's how people cope with things. They make a joke with it. But as I've become more aware, like, no, that's where you really use a STOP acronym. This is what I used to do, but is it beneficial? Is it useful in this situation? And this is where you start to change and you break those habits where, you know, this is what I used to do, but what did it cause? What did it lead to? And on the topic of not being judgmental, I would reference a self-control book, page 62, where it talks about don't jump to conclusions. Don't jump to conclusions. And another thing about not being judgmental or sarcastic is don't do it to people's face, but don't do it behind their back. Because you're not breaking that habit if you're doing it behind their back as well. You're just continuing that pattern. And you remember, people have the right to feel the way that they feel. You can apologize, you can change, but people have a right to feel the way they feel. No matter how much you want to change the way that they feel, they have a right to feel the way that they feel, just like you have a right to feel the way that you feel. But also go forward, and we'll learn tonight that we can feel the way that we want to feel. We can have all these emotions, but it's how we deal. It's how it ends. Is it going to end peacefully? So that ends procedure 4. So let's go to so used to the old books. Let's go to page 140. Page 140, and we're going to read procedure 5. It says, divide students into groups of 3. Assign participants in each group the following roles: speaker, listener, and observer. Distribute one of the listening scenarios from page 142 to the speaker in each group. Instruct the speaker to talk about the issues, the listener to use active listening responses to encourage the speaker to speak, the observer to give constructive feedback to the listener after the exercise is over. And what I did in my book is it says instruct the speaker to talk about issues. I highlighted what the roles are supposed to do. And it says it's allow each person in the group to perform each role. With each rotation, exchange listening scenarios, cutouts between groups. And something I find out interesting here is how you have a listener, you have a speaker, and you have an observer, which gives you what? Gives you different perspectives. And sometimes that's what we lack, is different perspectives. Because when you're so zoomed in, all you see is what is wrong. But when you zoom out, it's like, oh, there's actually a solution. This is not actually a mountain. It can feel like that. And we can allow our emotions to control us to the way where it seems there is no way out. But when you calm yourself down, that's why we really emphasize, calm yourself down before you make a decision. I mean, think about how many relationships, how many friendships, how many business, relations you could have messed up or jeopardized if you would have just said whatever you wanted to say at that moment. I can tell you there might be a lot of forgiveness that needs to go on, but that's why we stop and we think, because when we let our emotions control us, that's whenever things spiral. That's when things that go on that actually could have been prevented. So we're going to go to page 142, which is actually before the other pages. And this is the listening scenarios, and I'm just going to read these, but this is an extremely important activity. And what you're doing is you're training people to turn off their right-away responses and to listen to what the person is saying. So the first scenario is you do something beneficial for your work team. Yet another person continues to put your accomplishments down. Then you find out that person takes the credit for your work. And right here, you can use these as discussions because this might occur in your work area. And the most interesting thing is if the person who's a speaker, a listener, or an observer, if one of those people has actually done that to the other person. And what you're going to be able to do is kind of talk about things without actually pointing the fingers at people. Well, if this ever occurs, what would you do? And you can actually be able to help people find solutions to problems that they might not have wanted to speak up about. Scenario number 2. Someone always tries to be the one in charge, bossing everyone around without authority. It is very frustrating and annoying. Number 3, at staff meetings, you feel you can never get a word in edgewise. Someone is always interrupting and talking over you. You feel like pulling your hair out. Number 4, you are fed up with your coworker who you feel is lazy and uninterested in helping with the workload. Number 5, in your workplace, you are the only one of a different nationality. You have heard subtle comments directed at you that you feel are racially motivated. Number 6. You were late. Number 6, you were late coming back from lunch and your coworker cusses at you. And number 7, you find out that your coworkers are involved in illegal activities while on the job. Now, aren't these just really kind of spotlights on your work? I mean, imagine how many people would be like, oh no, I'm glad I didn't get that one. I don't know what I would do. These are things that really are going to get your mind to thinking. But also, something to keep in mind, and Tana brought this up last week, and I thought it was incredible because I'm the same way. When I hear something, my mind automatically goes to, okay, how do I solve this? That's just how my mind works. And so I've had to train my mind to really think, okay, let's just listen to this. Let's just listen to this. And, something that I think is really important is if someone brings something to you, depending on who they are, you might know, okay, they just want me to listen, or this person is seeking advice. But if you're unsure, don't be afraid to ask, would you like me to just listen, or are you telling me to seek advice? That's a way that you can also help someone realize they actually care. They're going to listen to me. Because sometimes people are going to want you to do both. Sometimes people are going to want you to listen, and then they can say, well, can you give me advice? And something that I had started doing a while back is I was in a situation where an individual, they always conveyed what was wrong. Like everything was just, this was wrong. And so I started turning the question back on them. When they would list everything, instead of giving a solution, I would say, okay, so what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Because if we are always giving the solutions, then we're not helping people figure out how they can also solve the problems. And that's part of training our employees, our staff. We are the supervisors, But when you need to make a split-second decision, it also takes the knowledge that you have been taught. There are times when you are going to be able to solve certain conflicts, be able to solve certain things that go on, just because you know that you should stop and think. I mean, I don't think we should have to have our supervisors, tell us, just lower down your voice. But if people are always used to yelling, then that's not what they do. But when we train ourselves to know this is how I should behave, then we can think on our own. We can start thinking, okay, if I can know that I can get upset and yell, then I can also know that I can calm myself down. And that's what we're trying to kind of rewire our minds to. If we can always go to what is wrong, then we can train ourselves to know what is right. Because we've already trained ourselves to do something that is impulsive. So we can retrain ourselves. So this listening scenario is for the listeners, the speakers, and the observers. And I think it's really important that there's observers because they give you a different perspective, but it also makes you realize that those who observe situations of disrespect are also responsible. And they should report if something is wrong. So let's go ahead and go back to page 140, and we're going to read procedure 6. It says, tell students that conflicts in the workplace account for loss of time and productivity. It can also affect the quality of work and the overall atmosphere of your environment. And I highlighted that because it's really, really important. It says, stress that one of the most important roles of manager is that of a mediator. A manager's goal is to help employees learn to be tolerant of each other and to communicate effectively and to find peaceful ways to resolve conflicts. Have students read and discuss the section Successful Managers Mediate Conflicts found on page 152 to 153. And notice that it says a manager's goal is to help employees learn, which means they're going to be able to do what they have been taught. They're going to be able to take what they have and put it into practice. So we are on page 152, and it says successful managers mediate conflicts. And I looked up what this word mediate means. And mediate means to intervene between people in a dispute in order to bring an agreement or reconciliation. Mediate means to intervene between people in a dispute in order to bring an agreement or reconciliation. And for that word conflicts, in the lower levels of the peaceful solution we defined it as a disagreement between two or more people. But in the peaceful solution intermediate character book, we talked about how conflicts is actually a failure to practice positive character. Now let's say that is a level up. It's a failure to practice positive character. Now notice, in the first chapter, we discuss how to develop a positive character and how to eliminate a negative character. So when we get into certain conflicts, it's actually a failure to practice what we've been taught. So going on, it says, inevitably conflicts will occur between coworkers. Now that word inevitably means it's certain to occur. It's certain. There's going to be conflicts. But strained relationships between employees account for 67% of unproductive and difficult situations, according to workplace experts. Managers can spend anywhere between 25 to 40% of their time managing conflicts. And that's from the Washington Business Journal reports. Regardless of who started it or how it started, the most important thing about conflicts is how they end. Super important, how they end. Now this is where you can discuss how much time do they deal with conflicts. But it also would be interesting to figure out why are these conflicts even caused? Why are these conflicts caused in the workplace? So I actually went online to look up 6 common workplace conflicts, and they showed how to deal with them. But we're just going to cover 6 common workplace conflicts because we're going to go over how we can mediate them. So the first one was the interdependent task-based conflicts. And it says these disagreements arise in situations when individuals in an interdependent project must coordinate their tasks so that everyone can successfully get their work done. And as an example of an accountant can't do their job without numbers. And if an employee is constantly late with reports, it affects the accountant's ability to finish up and make deadlines. Now, this is really where you are seeing how it ripples out. Your choices don't affect just you, they ripple out. And they also cause you to develop a reputation of being irresponsible. Now, number 2, leadership conflicts. Everyone has different leadership styles, and everyone reacts differently to those leadership styles. Some are bold, charismatic, others are more laid back, warm, and inviting. And it goes on to also talk about your personality, which I think was interesting because in the first chapter we talk about the difference between character and personality. And our goal is that no matter what someone's character is or personality is, that we find a way within ourselves to be able to work with those people. And this is why we're striving to eliminate any negative character traits and build a positive character. Number 3 was your work style conflicts. And I actually, when I teach something, it's always on my mind. So I was thinking about this class a lot, and I actually had a situation with a work style conflict. So I thought I would just share with you. So in my workplace, we were doing some chairs, I think about 30 plus chairs for a university in our area. And we needed to figure out how many seats we needed so I could put them on so we could deliver them. Well, one individual thought that that you could just count. And for me, I'm more of a visual person. So I'm just like, well, if we just put the seats on there, then we can eliminate how many we need because all the seats will be on the chairs. But they're like, no, let's just count them, which they're stacked in twos, and there's a ton of them, which can be a little bit difficult. And so I was really thinking about this class because they wanted to do it their way, right? They wanted to count the chairs. But I thought it would be more helpful to put the seats on the chairs to see how many more we needed left. Were either of us wrong? No. We just had a different way that we wanted to solve the problem. Now, if I was to get upset or the other person was to get upset, what do you think could have done? We could have spent the whole time arguing. Or if one person got upset and the other person kept their calm, they could have still achieved their goal. But what it takes in situations is that there's going to be conflict. It's inevitable. But how are you going to handle it? If that person did get upset, I couldn't control them. But I could control how I responded to what they were saying. So let's say this person did get upset. I could say, okay, well, let's count the chairs. Okay, so there's 24 chairs with seats. And there's 6 that still need. And then what I could do after is take all the seats and put them on there so I could make sure in my mind. It's all about finding a way to be peaceful because you can't control the other person, but you can control the way that you respond. Going on, the other 3 points were that personality-based conflicts, there's discrimination, and there's also creative idea conflicts where you're brainstorming and someone thinks their idea is better than yours, or everyone agrees with this idea and not yours. It can really cause a conflict. And there was a scenario in, I believe it was on page 40 of the workplace book, where an individual thought like the supervisor didn't like them because she wasn't taking any of her ideas. It wasn't like the supervisor didn't like them. It was just that her ideas were focused so much on the problem, or her coworkers was focusing on the solution. So this is something to really keep in mind as we change our point of view. It's not always how we see it. Sometimes we have to zoom out and understand the other person. So going back to page 152, the first paragraph, it says, the last sentence, regardless of who started or how it started, the most important thing about conflicts is how they end. Take the initiative to help others agree on a peaceful solution. Effective managers have skills in understanding how to stop a conflict before it escalates. Develop clear policies, and a policy is a course or principle of action. A course as a course or principle of action. Develop a clear policy so that there's no question in the employee's minds as to what is expected. Actively and objectively listen to all sides of an issue so that everyone feels he or she is being treated fairly. And objectively means as in a way that is not influenced by personal feelings or opinions and gets the facts first. So notice right there, they already developed 2 positive character traits, decisive and educated. These are some tools to head off conflicts before it spins out of control. By using your active listening skills, managers can help mediate conflicts between coworkers, so the outcome can become a positive learning experience for all involved. The following tips can help you mediate the next conflict successfully. So on page 143, it goes into 5 tips that can help you mediate conflict successfully. But the last sentence of the paragraph, or second to last, where it says that make the outcome a positive learning experience. When you're in a situation like this, you can actually have someone coming out thinking about the situation. Let's say something is wrong and you correct that person. Leave them with something that they can improve on. Leave them with something that they could do better at, so that when they leave, they're just not like, I did all of this wrong. So let's say someone's having a trouble with getting upset. They just react right away. Leave them with the tip that you can count to 10 whenever you get upset. Whenever you want to just yell at someone, you can simply bite your tongue. You can simply just do that, because that will be less painful than hurting someone else. Stop yourself from doing something that is going to ripple out and affect someone else. That goes back to just reacting. We stop and we think about what we say before we say it, or what we do before we do it. And these skills that we acquire, we have to be taught them. And then we value them, we imitate them, and then they ultimately become a part of who we are. At the bottom of page 152, it says, so much more can be accomplished in an atmosphere where there is peace. And remember, that's our whole goal, is to have peace, true peace. Really think about this. And you can, discuss this amongst, the managers that we're teaching, is that, what does peace mean to you? What does peace mean to you? Is it something that is long in the future and that one day you'll get to? Or do you feel that you can actually accomplish a peaceful environment? Because the truth is, all the tools are right in front of you in this book. It's kind of like if you're going to make a cake. You can have all the ingredients, but the cake's not going to be made if you don't put the effort into making that cake. Peace is not going to be in your workplace if we do not put the effort into making peace, into changing who we are, into realizing that what we're doing has created this atmosphere that is not working for us. So when I start to change the way I think, the way I feel about myself and other people in the work that I do, that's how I can create peace. And with this, I'm going to turn it over to the next teacher. So thank you very much.
Okay. Tori did a great job. We're going to jump right in where she left off on page 153 at the top. And we're continuing to talk about mediation. And these are some tips on how to mediate successfully. And we're going to read the first tip here. It says, isolate the issue. Be sure to use active listening to get to the heart of the matter. Remember, we learned that active listening is actually listening with the heart. Help those involved narrow their issues down to 2 or 3 if they have several concerns. Then focus on the most important one. You don't want to go in with a huge long list because you're not going to get anything done. Just a short list. Make every effort to manage emotions so that the emotions do not cloud the situation. How many of you have ever seen when emotions can really cloud a situation? Whether it be anger or hurt. Have you ever seen somebody hurt in the workplace? They're crying. there's hurt feelings. It's hard to mediate when you've got hurt feelings. So the emotions, it's really important to manage those emotions. Number 2, have each party state the problem from his or her viewpoint. And no interrupting. Let them state the problem from his or her viewpoint using facts rather than opinion. Everyone sees things a little differently. Although their accounts of the situation in question could be virtually identical, it is often the slight differences which stem from their perspectives that is the main source of the conflict. And Tori just gave a really great example about in her workplace how she wanted to put the cushions on the chair and somebody else wanted to count them. Something small like that. They're both putting the cushions on the chair, right? They're both dealing with the chairs and dealing with the cushions. As each party states their concerns, they are to use respectful tones of voice, facial expressions, and body language. So you wouldn't want somebody to be like, while the other person's giving their facts, rolling their eyes, having their arms crossed. No, we would want to make sure that our body language, that everyone is having a great facial expression, that nobody's got a scowl on their face, right? That's very important. Everyone has their own perspectives, so fact-based discussions are crucial. So that's what we would want to be teaching the managers. Fact-based discussions, not, well, I felt or I thought, right? Facts. What are the facts here? Let's deal with just the facts. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Number 3, have each party state what he or she can do to solve the problem. There we go. We're bringing in problem solving now. Let them try to solve the problems. Let them try to solve these problems themselves. And the other person can hear the possible solution. And it might end right there. This step helps each person to take responsibility in being part of the solution rather than part of the problem. It keeps the focus on being constructive rather than destructive. And we don't want to be on the demolition crew. We want to be on the building crew, right? Remember, there is a peaceful solution to all conflict if that 2-letter word, if, circle it in your book, if all parties are willing, underline willing, to put effort into finding it. There's always that solution, but you've got the if and you've got the willing, right? So we have to focus on the solution, not the problem. How many times, I know, I'll raise my hand, I don't mind telling on myself. Sometimes it's really easy to only focus on the problem, right? Because that's all you see is the problem. But you've got to be willing to look at the solution. Because the only way to take away said problem is to find a solution. Otherwise, the problem is always going to be there. The solution knocks it out of the way. It fixes it, right? It's kind of like if your car breaks down. You can just sit there and say, walk around your car, just walk around the car. I got a mechanic's wife in the crowd tonight. Walk around the car, my car is broke down. Walk around the car, my car is broken down. My car is broken down. Or you can get it fixed, right? And that's the same mindset we got to have here. We got to look for the solution. Number 4, have each party make a commitment to do his or her part to solve the problem and agree on a course of action. Then have each person make a commitment towards doing his or her part to ensure peaceful communication and interactions. And what will this do? It's going to prevent future conflicts because they've made a commitment to work peacefully. They've made a commitment towards that solution. They are committed, not that they are committed, but they're committed to the solution, okay? Number 5, and this is very important, and sometimes we tend to forget this one, follow up. Follow up. Be sure to check in after a specified amount of time with the parties involved to see if the plan is working. Don't just mediate, great, got a great plan, solution, everybody's in, okay. See ya. Because as managers, we need to check in and make sure everybody's fulfilling their part, because they might need that coach, that motivation, that person to remind them of the commitment that they made, right? How many of you have ever forgotten a commitment that you made and needed a reminder? Okay, I'm not afraid. Okay, great. Got some people that are not afraid to admit it. From time to time, we forget. We forget we made a commitment. We forget the problem. The problem solves, so we forget, and then we tend to, what takes place is you tend to slide back into old practices. And then that can rekindle another conflict, right? Meet with each person individually and then as a group to get an accurate perception of the progress that's being made. If the plan is working for one but not for the other, fine-tune or reevaluate to determine a different course of action that would be more helpful for all involved. Because if it works for one person and it's not working for another one, well, one person's going to be really glad and the other person's going to be really mad, right? And the goal of the mediator is to have everybody smiling, right? So we're not just there barking out instructions, but we follow up to see if the instructions are being followed, right? Okay, now we're going to read that big bolded in there. It says, in everything we do, we teach. Even when we correct, we teach. Now that's important. If we're teaching or correcting in the right way, we're teaching. Because if we're just hollering and screaming out orders to everybody, well, we're really not teaching anything except, I don't want to take instruction that way, right? But anytime you give an instruction we're teaching when we're correcting. And correction is one of the fastest ways that you can grow as an individual. If you're never corrected or you don't accept correction, you will never grow. You're never going to advance in your company. You're never going to advance in relationships. You're just going to be stuck because everybody's going to be like, that's the one we tiptoe around. Walk on eggshells. Don't point out anything that person's done wrong because, why? How many of us have ever known anyone like that, where you've got to just, okay, let's just fix it. Don't tell her. Just fix it. Shh. But the person's never going to grow because they're always going to make that same mistake because we're afraid. We're very afraid. But that's not helpful. So as managers, as much as it might not be comfortable sometimes to have to do the correcting or the teaching, if you let it go, it's going to cause animosity with the other workers. Can you see how that would occur? Because they're like, well, she never corrects this person, but she's always correcting me. Well, the manager might say, managers, well, these people take correction well, so I feel comfortable correcting them. But in their mind, they're like, why does she never get corrected? So it's very important that we treat everyone equally and that we don't give in to, because that person needs to learn too. And we're actually stunting their growth if we don't bring that correction. Okay, so now we're going to run back to the lesson plan on page 140. And we're going to read Procedure 7 now. Procedure 7, it says, discuss with students various situations in which employees might be criticized for their work. Inform students that another quality of an effective manager with positive character is the ability to correct, to learn, to help support building a team approach. Have students read from pages 154 to 157 and emphasize the need to delegate effectively, taking initiative in order to motivate others as a manager. Have them pay close attention to the section entitled Do's and Don'ts for Dealing with Problem Behaviors, found on page 157 through 158. As a class, answer questions after reading the two scenarios found on 158. So we're going to jump over to 154. And I know we always like to put the procedure number on the top of the page, so on the top there you could put Procedure 7 at the top of page 154 there. And we're on number 8, And number 8 is successful managers correct to learn. Correction at its best is helpful and promotes understanding and growth. Isn't that what we just talked about? Highlight that. Correction promotes growth. Those are the only 3 words you need to highlight, because those are very important words in that sentence. Correction promotes growth. Now, the whole sentence is important, but I'm talking about the highlight there. As an effective manager, one of your goals, so managers, one of the goals we're teaching the managers should be to help employees to improve rather than to insult or discourage them from growing. Sometimes it is wise to use a sandwich approach when correcting a situation. This means sandwiching a correction by using it with other positive statements, like this. You know, you're always on time for work. I love the way you're always on time. It's really great. And you always see things through to the end. But I would like for you to work on packing up your stuff before it's actually time to go home. Okay? So you gave them some things that they do well, but you also pointed out something that you'd like for them to work on. You sandwiched it. And you think that they would take that better than, Sally, you're always packing up too early to go home. And then all the other people in the workplace are there listening. Instead, the sandwich approach, they're like, wow, you know, Sally, she always gets to work early. Wow, Sally, she always sees things through to the end. And then they're thinking, wow, do I pack up my stuff early? So they're not focusing on Sally, they're focusing on the sandwich. Do you see the point of how valuable that sandwich approach can be? Because they're looking at all the ingredients of the sandwich. Hey, I want to be early. She noticed, or he noticed. I want to see things through to the end. It got noticed. Ooh, I want to make sure I'm not packing my stuff up too early. That's company time, right? So you got that correction in, and you actually end up correcting the other people that hear it, and the person that's hearing the correction isn't embarrassed either. So it really is a win-win situation. So we're sandwiching, and it says, even as adults, we tend to take correction with a jolt. It's true. Nobody in this room can say, I love when someone has to correct me. In fact, I just sit there all day long, and I hope that the person who is my manager or supervisor comes over and has something to correct me about. No. Because as human beings, we strive to want to please. That's just in our nature usually, right? Unless there's something wrong with us, and then, we can get help for that. But we do usually aim to please. So when we feel like we've let that bar down a little bit, we don't like it. And it's not that, and somebody told me the other day, when you see my reaction when you have to point something out to me, I'm not upset because you're pointing it out to me. I'm upset at myself because I feel like I've let you down. And I had to stop and think, wow, because I was thinking that the person just didn't like when I had to point something out, because they'd be like, what did I do now? But it was more like toward them, in an inward kind of way toward them, because I thought, well, am I saying it wrong? Am I not? But they said, no, that's not it at all. I feel like I failed. And I'm like, you come to work every day. You don't fail. We learned that the other night in another seminar. You show up every day. That's an accomplishment. Some people call in sick half the week, right? So it's just always that perspective that Tori talked about. I mean, you never know what's going on in the other person's mind. Whether you're the supervisor or whether you're a worker, whether you're a coworker with a coworker, that's why it's so important that we never try to assume what the other person's thinking, or assume why they did that, or assume that body language, or assume why they said it. Because you could be wrong. You're probably wrong most of the time, because you can't jump inside someone's brain and know what they're thinking and what motivated them to do a particular thing, or say a particular thing, or have a particular look on their face, right? So that's something that we can encourage our supervisors, our managers. because it is a jolt. Nobody likes it. I'm a manager, and when somebody that manages me has to correct something that I've done wrong, I go back to when I was 5 years old in the kindergarten class, and I wrote the wrong letter on the board, because that's where you go in your mind. So we always have to have that compassion and that empathy. No matter how old we get or no matter what position that we might hold, nobody really loves to be corrected. So we have to learn to bring the correction because it is necessary. We just learned that, right? Correction is necessary for growth. So we need to teach the managers how to do it effectively. I know there are people, and I'm really working on this because, it's something that I'm really working on. I'm a work in progress. You can hang that around my neck. She is a work in progress. I know people that can come and correct me and tell me, and I'm thanking them. Thanks for coming by and correcting me. Because they do it in such a way that you don't even realize it. You're just, wow, that was so great, great comfort. I just got corrected. Right? Because you can have it in a way that's not great, and you don't forget that. And it's not you want to forget it, but you can't. It's one of those bad experiences. Well, we need to really guide the managers when we're teaching. You want to be the one that actually thanks them. Thanks for coming by and pointing that out to me, right? Because we've used that sandwich approach. Because really, aren't we all works in progress? I mean, how many of you, I just want to show of hands, how many of you have something around your neck that says, I am perfect? So we're all a work in progress, right? So we need to have that compassion when dealing with one another, no matter which side of the scenario we're on. If you're a worker, realize, no, your manager is definitely not perfect. He or she is a work in progress. Managers, your workers, they are a work in progress. And deal accordingly. And remember what we learned last week. How would I want this said to me? And say it that way. How would I want that said to me? So it says, I'll read that sentence again. Even as adults, we tend to take correction with a jolt, but a successful manager is one who shows care, concern, and respect, making it a learning experience for all involved. And remember what I just brought out, so that the others that see the sandwich, they're learning as well. So all involved, even the ones that are, that might have been previously going, oh, she's in trouble. Now they're going, wow, I want to be on time. I want to do this. I can work on that too. Hope she doesn't call me in the office next. I'm going to really work on that next week. So it's praise, correct, praise. You praise them, you correct them, you praise them. Or praise, praise, correct, right? But never correct first. Always, you want that nice part of the sandwich on there first, okay? And let the correction part be like the pickle, okay? So you're laying on the meat, you're laying on the mayo, you got the lettuce and everything, and you're laying on all that praise, you're building them up, and then you put the pickle on there. And hope that they don't walk away looking like a pickle. But just put a pickle on there. Just something, just a little pickle. Something for them to think about, because they are just so excited about all the meat you just laid on them. And it's not, bribe's not the word, it's not like it's not fake. Find the things, because a successful manager can find positive things in every single person that they manage. And if you can't find something positive about everyone, you're not looking hard enough, and we'll just have to order you some special manager glasses, because everyone has positive things. Remember, we already learned that everyone is made up of both positive and negative, right? So there's going to be some positive things there. You might have to take the extra effort to look for them. But guess what, managers? That's your job. Look and build up, okay? So it says, keep in mind, where am I at here? For example, you might be able to say to Tony, all the dates were wrong on the balance sheet, and many of the entries were incomplete. Some of the subtotals were in the wrong columns, and a few of the grand totals were incorrect. Poor Tony. Poor Tony. Can you remember to put the black files on the corner shelf and the white files in the drawers? But you might not be able to say that to Julie. You have to know your workers. I mean, Julie might be like, I can't do anything right, I quit. Well, then you don't have a worker anymore because your worker quit because you didn't sandwich. Tony, Tony can handle it. You can tell Tony anything. You can say, Tony, the numbers were wrong. Maybe you have a different kind of relationship or rapport with Tony. Tony's like, yeah, give it to me. Well, all your numbers were wrong and you wrote them in the wrong columns. Sorry about that, boss. Because Tony's a different person. And Julie is just like, she's just going to quit. Because she just can't handle it because she's going through a divorce at home and she feels like she can't do anything right. So do you, as a manager, that you can't give Tony's correction to Julie. Do you see why you have to learn and know the people you work with? And Tori brought that out. You learn the people that you work with. And you have to learn to get along. So keep in mind that correction should only be used as a learning, guiding tool and not one that breaks down or devalues. There's going to be different. Now let's read that again. It was on page 153 at the bottom. In everything we teach, even when we correct, we teach. That quote there. It's important. That's an important quote. We're always teaching. We could teach them to want to quit. Or we could teach them to want to please us more. So there's two things here that we're going to cover here. It says, use the correction to learn approach on the following statements. Number one, rather than, this report is terrible. Didn't you take English in school? What could you say instead? I want you to be thinking about this. This is what you're going to be telling our managers. Be thinking about what you could say instead. What could you say other than, this report is terrible. Didn't you take English in school? You could say, I can see you've spent a lot of time on this. Do you want me to run it through a spell check for you? We can throw it on my computer and we can run it through a spell check, grammar check. Ask a question like, you're willing to help. I see you spent a lot of time on this. Acknowledge the time that they put in. That could be a possible different way to say it, right? Number two, rather than, I can't believe you were so rude to that customer. What could you say instead? You say, Sally, I understand that sometimes you get really busy with the paperwork on your desk, but when the customers come in, it'd be helpful if you could just acknowledge them, greet them when they come in the door, and then you can get back to the paperwork afterwards. You do a really great job on that paperwork. But remember the company policy, greet customers, customers always come first, right? So you're telling them that they always do a great job with the paperwork, but remind them about the company rule that you always greet the people when they come in the door. Greet them with a smile. You don't have to say it. You're always rude to the guy, because they might not always be, and then you're generalizing again, right? I can't believe you were so rude to that customer. It can go to, you're always rude. I always get complaints about you. Do you see where that can escalate? Instead of, you do really great with the paperwork, and I'm really glad that you do that. But when the customer comes in, just remember to acknowledge them. Give them a big smile, right? Are we out of time already? 5 minutes, okay. Okay, so you can see now on the bottom it says, true correction, true learning. True correction, true learning. Remember, when you accept correction, you grow. When you give correction, you cause a person to grow. Okay, so continuing in procedure 7, we're going to jump to the next one here, number 9, on page 155 here. It says successful managers, and I like the way the Peaceful Solution puts that here. You notice successful managers. Well, you can be a manager, or you can be a successful manager. That's what I want to, when I'm training the managers, that's what I want to tell them. You can be a manager, or you can be a successful manager. The Peaceful Solution is training us on how to be successful managers. So tip number 9, successful managers encourage a team approach. No man is an island. No man stands alone. Our word's appropriate for almost every work environment. As an effective manager, it's your responsibility to encourage a team approach by motivating others to work together. I'm going to tell you an instance of why this is important. You have someone that likes to be the island. They like to be the one doing everything, okay? They go to lunch. They're the island, so they didn't share any of the information with the other workers, right? So they go to lunch. They're gone for an hour, I don't know, half hour, however long they're gone. Somebody comes in. Only the island knew the information. So now, for an hour, you're trying to text the island. You're trying to send a plane over to the island. There's no flights to the island. The island's cut off. The person that's made themselves an island, and now the workplace is basically shut down because you can't serve a customer because only the island had the information and didn't share it with the other workers. That's just one instance, but it's vitally important that we play as a team. Get a phone call, somebody's flight's coming in. Let's say you're an airline, you're in having to pick people up from the airport or work things out for rides for people. If you don't share the information, somebody can be sitting in an airport, somebody can be stranded, they don't have a way because all the information didn't get relayed to the whole team. And you got sick, you got a bellyache, oh, manager, can I go home? I'm really, really sick. Oh, I feel like I'm gonna vomit. Yes, please, go home. So they go home, and none of the information's passed to the rest of the workers. Do you see where the company sits? Whatever it is, whether it's you're in food, whether you're in any kind of service, whatever you're in, banking, anything. And as an effective manager, it's your responsibility to encourage the team approach by motivating others to work together. This is no easy task. We've been raised to have a drive of competitiveness and often consider our coworkers as members of the opposite team. Oh, we need to get this out of our mind of any workplace that we ever go in and teach the Peaceful Solution. I went in and I was talking to some managers in a restaurant, and you had the cashiers and the order takers, and you had the cooks, and they didn't communicate well at all. And it was they always, they never. When they run out of food, they don't tell us. Whatever the case might be, it's important, even in departments within a company, that we're not islands. We're the cashier island, we're the cook island, we're the cleanup island, and no one communicates. I hope we're getting to the point where we're going to have to stop now for the evening, but I hope I can leave you tonight, and we'll pick up next week again. But I want you to really think about throughout the week, as you're going throughout whatever you do throughout the week, think about the island and how important it is to take that island and that other island there and connect them and make them one landmass to work together, okay? So that's what I want to leave you with tonight, and we'll pick up here next week. Appreciate you all coming this evening, and you have a very great, peaceful week.